The corner table in the school cafeteria had become Priya's refuge. Every day, she would hurry through the lunch line, eyes fixed on the floor, and make her way to that same empty table near the window. She'd learned that sitting alone was better than facing rejection. Better than hearing the whispers. Better than seeing the looks on everyone's faces when she approached. It hadn't always been this way. Just last year, Priya had friends, not many, but enough. They'd sit together, laugh at silly jokes, and make plans for the weekend. But everything changed when her dad lost his job and they had to move to a smaller apartment across town. New school, new faces, new rules she didn't understand yet. On her first day, Priya had worn her favorite outfit, a hand-me-down sweater from her cousin and jeans that were a little too short. She didn't realize how different she looked from the other kids until Kylie, the girl with perfect hair who seemed to be in charge, pointed it out loudly in front of everyone. "What is she wearing? Did your clothes shrink in the wash, or are you just growing too fast for your parents to keep up?" The entire class had erupted in laughter. From that moment on, Priya became that poor girl or the weird one. Every attempt to make friends was met with cold shoulders or fake smiles that disappeared the moment she turned away. She stopped raising her hand in class, even when she knew the answers. She became invisible, or at least, she tried to be. Her mom noticed the change. "How was school today?" she would ask, her eyes filled with hope each afternoon. "Fine," Priya would answer, the same way she always did. She couldn't tell her mom the truth, that she spent every lunch period alone, that no one picked her for group projects, that sometimes she hid in the bathroom stall during breaks just to avoid walking the hallways by herself. Her mom had enough to worry about. Working 2 jobs, taking care of Priya and her little brother, and helping Dad with his job search. The dark circles under her mom's eyes were getting deeper. Priya couldn't add to that burden. So she kept her head down and counted the days until summer break. 62 more days. She could make it that long. She had to. Today was Tuesday, chicken nugget day. Priya didn't even like chicken nuggets that much, but she took them anyway because it was faster than asking for something else. She grabbed a carton of milk, paid with her lunch card, and headed to her corner. As she walked, she felt the familiar weight of eyes following her. Kylie and her friends were at their usual table in the center of the cafeteria, the place reserved for the popular kids. Priya heard a snicker as she passed. She clutched her tray tighter and kept walking. Her table was empty, as always. She sat down and opened her milk carton, trying to ignore the noise and laughter from the other tables. She pulled out her book, an old fantasy novel she'd read 3 times already, and lost herself in its pages while picking at her food. She was so absorbed in the story that she didn't notice someone approaching until a shadow fell across her table. "Is this seat taken?" Priya looked up, startled. A woman she'd never seen before stood there, holding a tray. She wasn't a student, she was too old, maybe in her late 20s. She wore a simple button-up shirt and had her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. A visitor's badge was clipped to her shirt pocket. Priya glanced around, confused. There were plenty of empty tables nearby. Why would this stranger want to sit with her? No, it's not taken," she finally mumbled, her voice rusty from disuse. The woman smiled and set her tray down. "Thanks. I'm Ms. Rivera. I'm new here, starting as the art teacher next week. Just visiting today to get the lay of the land." She sat down across from Priya. "Hope you don't mind the company." Priya shook her head, still confused. She could feel people watching them. Great, another reason for everyone to stare. "I'm Priya," she offered, not sure what else to say. "Nice to meet you, Priya. What are you reading?" Ms. Rivera asked, gesturing to the book. "Oh, it's called The Secret Garden," Priya said, suddenly embarrassed by her worn paperback with its cracked spine and dog-eared pages. That's one of my favorites. I read it when I was about your age, Ms. Rivera said, her eyes lighting up. Have you gotten to the part where they find the key yet? Priya nodded, surprised that this grown-up seemed genuinely interested. I'm actually rereading it. I like the part where the garden starts coming back to life. Me too. There's something magical about bringing something forgotten back to life, isn't there? Ms. Rivera took a bite of her sandwich. For the first time in months, Priya felt herself relaxing a little. They talked about books for the rest of lunch period. Ms. Rivera had read many of the same stories Priya loved, and she recommended a few new ones that Priya had never heard of. When the bell rang, Priya realized she'd been so caught up in their conversation that she'd actually eaten all her lunch. She couldn't remember the last time that had happened. It was nice talking with you, Priya, Ms. Rivera said as they stood up. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow? Priya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As she walked to her next class, she felt lighter somehow. Just one normal conversation, one person who didn't look at her like she was invisible or a problem to avoid. It shouldn't have meant so much, but it did. That night, for the first time in weeks, when her mom asked how school was, Priya had something to share. I met the new art teacher today, she said quietly as they washed dishes together. She's nice. Her mom looked surprised, then smiled. That's good to hear, sweetheart. Priya went to bed thinking about Ms. Rivera and wondering if she really would see her tomorrow. Probably not, she told herself. Adults were busy. The new teacher was just being polite. She wouldn't remember Priya or their conversation. But what if she did? Priya fell asleep with that question in her mind, a tiny flicker of hope that she hadn't felt in a long time. She didn't know it yet, but that simple lunch conversation was about to change everything. The next morning, Priya woke up earlier than usual. She stood in front of her small closet, something she hadn't done in months. Usually, she just grabbed whatever was clean and comfortable. Today, she hesitated, pulling out a light blue t-shirt her grandmother had sent for her birthday. She'd never worn it to school before. You look nice today, her mom said as Priya came into the kitchen. There was a question in her voice that Priya pretended not to hear. Thanks, she mumbled, pouring herself a bowl of cereal. Her little brother, Arjun, was still half asleep, his head almost dropping into his own breakfast. The bus ride to school was the same as always, loud, chaotic, and lonely. Priya sat near the front, her backpack hugged to her chest, staring out the window. She tried not to think about lunch period, about whether Ms. Rivera would be there or not. It was stupid to get her hopes up. Morning classes dragged by. In math, Kylie accidentally knocked Priya's pencil case off her desk, scattering erasers and pens across the floor. When Priya bent to pick them up, someone whispered, "She's probably used to picking stuff off the ground." A few kids laughed. By the time lunch rolled around, Priya's earlier excitement had faded. She moved through the lunch line automatically, eyes down. She didn't even look up until she reached her corner table. It was empty. Of course it was. What had she expected? Priya sat down and unwrapped her sandwich. She'd just taken her first bite when she heard that now familiar voice. Mind if I join you again? Priya looked up to see Ms. Rivera standing there, tray in hand, smiling just like yesterday. She was wearing a bright yellow scarf today, a splash of color against her simple white blouse. Sure, Priya said, her voice coming out steadier than she expected. Ms. Rivera sat down and immediately launched into conversation. So I was thinking about what we talked about yesterday, The Secret Garden, and I remembered another book you might like. It's about a girl who finds a hidden door in her house that leads to another world. Have you read Coraline? Their conversation flowed easily from there. Ms. Rivera didn't talk to her like she was a kid who needed help. She talked to Priya like she was a person with interesting thoughts and ideas. I'm setting up my classroom this week, Ms. Rivera said as they finished eating. The previous teacher left it pretty bare. I could use some help putting up some displays if you're free after school sometime. Priya hesitated. Was this real? Or was Ms. Rivera just feeling sorry for her? You don't have to, Ms. Rivera added quickly, seeing Priya's uncertainty. Just thought I'd ask. No, I can help, Priya said. Tomorrow, maybe? I'd need to tell my mom. Tomorrow works perfectly. Room 118, right after final bell. Ms. Rivera smiled. And please, only if you want to. For the rest of the day, Priya felt different. Not completely better. Kylie still rolled her eyes when Priya answered a question in social studies, and no one picked her for teams in gym class. But knowing she had somewhere to go after school tomorrow, something to look forward to, it changed things, just a little. That night, she asked her mom if she could stay after school the next day. What for? Her mom asked, looking up from the bills she was sorting. The new art teacher needs help setting up her classroom, Priya explained. I said I would help. Her mom's eyebrows rose in surprise. You volunteered? Priya nodded, suddenly self-conscious. A slow smile spread across her mom's face. That's wonderful, Beta. Of course you can stay. I'll pick you up at, what time? 4:30. Perfect. I'll be there. The next day, Priya counted the hours, then the minutes. When the final bell rang, she gathered her things quickly and made her way to room 118. The door was open, and she could hear music playing inside, something upbeat with guitars and drums. Ms. Rivera was standing on a chair, trying to hang a large poster on the wall. She turned when Priya knocked on the doorframe. Priya. You came. She climbed down from the chair. Thank goodness. I was about to fall and embarrass myself on my first week. The classroom was a mess of boxes, art supplies, and colorful posters waiting to be hung. I might have been a bit ambitious, Ms. Rivera admitted, gesturing around. But I want this to be a space where kids feel inspired. For the next hour and a half, they worked together. Priya helped hang posters showing famous artworks from around the world. She organized shelves of supplies, colored pencils, markers, different types of paper. Ms. Rivera let her decide where things should go, asking for her opinion, listening to her ideas. What kind of art do you like to make? Ms. Rivera asked as they unpacked a box of clay tools. Priya shrugged. I don't really make art. Everyone makes art, Ms. Rivera said. It might not be drawing or painting. Maybe it's the way you arrange things on your shelf, or how you put together an outfit, or even how you fold a paper airplane. Priya thought about this. I guess. I like to doodle sometimes. Little patterns and stuff. When I'm bored in class. She felt her cheeks heat up. Not that I get bored in class a lot. Ms. Rivera laughed. I won't tell. Actually, that sounds like Zentangle art. Let me show you. She pulled out a book full of intricate patterns, circles, lines, and shapes that came together to form beautiful designs. This is real art? Priya asked in disbelief. Absolutely. Art isn't just realistic paintings of landscapes or portraits. It's any creative expression that means something to you. By the time Priya's mom texted that she was outside, the classroom was transformed. Colorful posters covered the walls, supplies were neatly organized, and sample artworks were displayed on a special table near the window. This looks amazing, Ms. Rivera said, hands on her hips as they surveyed their work. I couldn't have done this without you, Priya. It was fun, Priya said, surprised to find she meant it. Would you like to have lunch again tomorrow? Ms. Rivera asked. I enjoyed our conversations. Priya nodded, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. Me too. As she walked out to her mom's car, Priya realized she was smiling. Actually smiling, without having to force it. The feeling was so unfamiliar it took her a moment to recognize it. It was hope. Over the next 2 weeks, lunch with Ms. Rivera became Priya's daily routine. They talked about books, art, and sometimes just everyday things like favorite foods or movies. Each day, Priya found herself speaking a little more freely, laughing a little more easily. The weight she'd been carrying for months seemed just a bit lighter. Other students had noticed. Priya caught whispers as she walked past tables in the cafeteria. "Teacher's pet," someone muttered once, loud enough for her to hear. But strangely, it didn't hurt as much as it would have before. Ms. Rivera's friendship was like a shield that made the other kids' words bounce off instead of sticking to her. On Friday, as they were finishing lunch, Ms. Rivera said, "I'm starting an after-school art club next week. Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'd love it if you'd join." Priya hesitated. Lunch was one thing, just the two of them in her quiet corner. An art club meant other students, watching her, judging her. "You don't have to decide now," Ms. Rivera added, seeing her uncertainty. "Just think about it." That weekend, Priya did think about it. She thought about it while helping her mom with grocery shopping, while playing board games with Arjun, while lying in bed staring at the ceiling. The idea filled her with both excitement and dread. On Monday, Ms. Rivera didn't mention the art club again. They talked about a documentary Ms. Rivera had watched about marine life. Priya shared that she'd always wanted to visit an aquarium. It was comfortable, safe. As the bell rang, Priya took a deep breath. "I think I'd like to try the art club. Just once, to see." Ms. Rivera's face lit up. "That's wonderful. Tomorrow after school, then." That night, Priya couldn't sleep. What if the other kids were mean to her? What if she was terrible at art and everyone laughed? What if she ruined everything? By morning, she'd nearly talked herself out of going. But something kept pushing her forward, maybe the memory of how it felt to help create that beautiful classroom, or the way Ms. Rivera looked at her like she was someone worth knowing. Tuesday classes crawled by. In English, they were assigned group projects, and as usual, no one chose Priya as their partner. The teacher had to place her with a group of 3 girls who barely acknowledged her presence. One of them, Deepa, had been in Priya's math class last year. Before the move, before everything changed, they'd been friendly. Now Deepa just looked uncomfortable, as if Priya's unpopularity might be contagious. After the final bell, Priya stood outside room 118 for almost 5 minutes, gathering her courage. Through the door, she could hear voices and laughter. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. She could just go home. No one would blame her. But she pushed the door open. Inside, about a dozen students were arranging chairs in a circle. Ms. Rivera was setting out art supplies on a central table. She looked up when Priya entered and broke into a warm smile. "Priya. I'm so glad you made it." All eyes turned to her. Priya froze. Among the students, she recognized Deepa from her English class. There was also Raj from her math class, a quiet boy who usually sat in the back. A few other faces she knew from passing in the hallways. And, to her horror, Kylie's best friend Zoe. Priya almost turned and ran. But Ms. Rivera was already walking toward her, gently guiding her to an empty chair. "Everyone, this is Priya. She has an amazing eye for pattern and design. I'm so happy she's joining us today." Priya sat down, her face burning. She kept her eyes fixed on her hands, twisted together in her lap. "Today we're going to explore Zentangle art," Ms. Rivera announced. "It's all about creating beautiful images through patterns and repetition." Priya's head snapped up. Zentangle, the art form Ms. Rivera had shown her when they were setting up the classroom. She knew about this. Ms. Rivera distributed paper and fine-tipped black pens. The beauty of Zentangle is that there are no mistakes, she explained, demonstrating some basic patterns on a large sketch pad. Every line contributes to the whole. For the next hour, the room fell quiet except for Ms. Rivera's occasional guidance and the scratch of pens on paper. Priya lost herself in the work, adding one pattern after another, watching her design grow more complex and beautiful with each stroke. She didn't notice Deepa watching her until the other girl whispered, "That looks really cool." Priya blinked in surprise. "Thanks," she whispered back. "How did you learn to do that? The wavy pattern thing?" Deepa asked. "I can show you," Priya offered, hardly believing the words coming out of her own mouth. By the end of the session, Priya had helped 3 different students with their designs. Even Zoe had reluctantly asked for advice on filling a difficult corner of her paper. Ms. Rivera walked around the room, offering encouragement, but she let Priya take the lead when other students approached her. As everyone was packing up, Ms. Rivera called for their attention. "Next Thursday, we'll be starting a special project, a collaborative mural for the main hallway. The principal has given us permission to create something that represents our school community. I'd like everyone to think about what that means to you." Priya's mind immediately filled with ideas, colors flowing together, patterns interlocking, different styles coming together to create something whole. For once, she wasn't thinking about how to be invisible. She was thinking about making something visible. As students filed out, Ms. Rivera held Priya back. "You were amazing today," she said quietly. "Did you see how everyone wanted your help?" Priya shrugged, embarrassed but pleased. "I just showed them some patterns." "You did much more than that. You shared your talent. You connected with people." Ms. Rivera squeezed her shoulder gently. "I'm proud of you for coming today." Walking home, her mom was working late and couldn't pick her up. Priya felt lighter than she had in months. One good afternoon didn't erase all the bad ones. Kylie and her friends would still be there tomorrow. But something had shifted. For the first time since moving to this school, Priya had a place where she belonged, even if it was just for a few hours a week. She had something to look forward to. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. The next few days passed in a blur for Priya. She still sat with Ms. Rivera at lunch, but something subtle had changed. She found herself looking around the cafeteria more, noticing things, like how Raj from art club always had a book with him, or how Deepa braided her hair differently each day. In the hallways, a few students from art club had started to nod hello when they passed her. Small gestures, barely noticeable to anyone else, but to Priya, they felt enormous. At home, the changes were more obvious. She talked during dinner. She helped Arjun with his homework without being asked. One evening, her father paused in the doorway of her room, watching her sketch patterns in a notebook Ms. Rivera had given her. "You seem happier," he said quietly. Priya looked up, surprised. Her father's face was tired, job hunting was wearing him down, but his eyes were kind. "I guess I am," she admitted. He nodded, a small smile breaking through his weariness. "Good. That's good." Thursday came, and with it, the second art club meeting. This time, Priya didn't hesitate at the door. She walked in, found an empty seat next to Deepa, and set down her backpack. "I was hoping you'd be here," Deepa said. "I tried those wave patterns at home, but they didn't come out right." Before Priya could answer, Ms. Rivera called for everyone's attention. "Today we start planning our mural," she announced. "But first, I need a student leader for this project, someone who can help coordinate ideas and keep track of our progress." Her eyes scanned the room, settling on Priya. "Priya, would you be willing to take on that role?" The room went quiet. Priya felt her heart hammering in her chest. Lead the project? Her? She couldn't even speak up in class without her voice shaking. But Ms. Rivera was looking at her with such confidence, as if there was no doubt in her mind that Priya could do this. Okay, Priya heard herself say. I can try. Excellent, Ms. Rivera handed her a large sketchbook. This will be our project journal. We'll record all our ideas here. For the next hour, the club brainstormed themes for their mural. Ms. Rivera had Priya stand at the front with a marker, writing down everyone's suggestions on a large whiteboard. At first, Priya's hand trembled so badly she could barely write. But as ideas flowed, nature, unity, growth, community, she grew more comfortable. What do you think, Priya? Ms. Rivera asked when the board was full of suggestions. Priya looked at all the words, patterns forming in her mind. What if we combine these? Like, a tree with roots spreading out for community, branches reaching up for growth, and different colored leaves for diversity? The room fell silent again. Then Raj said, that sounds cool, and Deepa nodded eagerly. Even Zoe looked impressed. Ms. Rivera beamed. I think Priya just found our theme. Walking home afterward, Priya hugged the project journal to her chest. Her mind raced with ideas for the mural, colors, patterns, ways to include everyone's vision. She was so caught up in her thoughts that she almost didn't notice when someone called her name. Priya. Wait up. She turned to see Deepa jogging to catch up with her. Do you walk this way too? Deepa asked, slightly out of breath. Yeah, I live on Oakwood Street, Priya said. Me too. Well, just off it, on Pine Lane. Deepa fell into step beside her. I never knew we lived so close. They walked in silence for a moment, then Deepa said, your idea for the mural was really good. Thanks, Priya murmured. Another silence, this one stretching longer. Finally, Deepa spoke again, her voice quieter. I'm sorry I haven't been nice to you. In English class and stuff. Priya kept her eyes on the sidewalk. It's okay. No, it's not, Deepa insisted. I know what it's like to be the new kid. I was new last year, and it was hard. Then when Kylie started picking on you. I was afraid she'd start on me too if I was friendly to you. She kicked at a pebble on the path. That was really lame of me. Priya didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to tell Deepa it was fine, to smooth things over. But another part, a part that had been silent for too long, refused to pretend. It hurt, she admitted. Especially since we used to talk in math last year. Deepa winced. I know. I'm really sorry. They reached the corner where their paths would split. I really liked your Zentangle designs, Deepa said. Maybe you could show me more sometime? We could meet at the library or something. Priya hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, we could do that. Saturday? Around 2? Okay. As Priya continued home alone, she felt strangely unsettled. Deepa's apology should have made her happy, but instead, she felt a jumble of emotions, relief, lingering hurt, cautious hope, and underneath it all, a slow-burning anger she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. By the time she reached home, the anger had crystallized into a realization: she deserved better. She deserved friends who wouldn't abandon her when someone cooler came along. She deserved to walk the hallways without ducking her head. She deserved to raise her hand in class without fear. That night, she opened the project journal and began sketching. The tree took shape under her fingers, strong roots, a solid trunk, branches reaching toward the edges of the page. She added swirling patterns to the bark, flowing lines that suggested movement and growth. In the empty spaces between branches, she wrote words: courage, voice, belong, truth. When she finally set down her pencil, it was past midnight. Her hand ached, but her mind felt clear for the first time in months. The next day at lunch, Ms. Rivera noticed the change immediately. "You seem different today," she said, studying Priya's face. Priya nodded. "I think I am." She pulled out the project journal to show her progress. As Ms. Rivera flipped through the pages, her expression grew more and more impressed. "Priya, this is incredible work. The detail, the symbolism, it's exactly what I was hoping for. I want to add everyone's ideas," Priya explained, pointing to different sections of the design. "But keep it unified. Like we're all different, but we're part of the same. I don't know, ecosystem." "That's a perfect metaphor," Ms. Rivera said. Then, more quietly, "You know, leadership looks good on you." Priya felt herself blush, but for once, she didn't look away. "There's something else," she said, pulling a paper from her folder. It was a flyer for the school talent showcase, happening in 3 weeks. "I was thinking maybe art club could enter the mural as a group project. We could document the process and present it together." Ms. Rivera's eyebrows shot up. "That's a big stage, Priya. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Priya wasn't sure. The thought of standing on a stage made her stomach twist. But something stronger than fear was driving her now. "I think we could do it together," she said. "All of us." As the bell rang, Ms. Rivera handed back the journal with a smile that contained both pride and concern. "One step at a time, okay? Let's see how the mural develops first." Priya nodded, but in her mind, she was already steps ahead, imagining possibilities that would have seemed impossible just a few weeks ago. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but for the first time, she could see that there was a path. Saturday arrived crisp and sunny. Priya stood outside the public library, checking the time on her phone every few minutes. It was 1:55. She'd arrived 15 minutes early, too nervous to wait at home any longer. What if Deepa didn't show up? What if this was some kind of trick? The old fears whispered in her ear, but Priya pushed them away. She thought of Ms. Rivera's trust in her, of the project journal tucked safely in her backpack, of the way her dad had smiled when she told him she was meeting a friend. At exactly 2 o'clock, Deepa rounded the corner, waving when she spotted Priya. "You're here already. Sorry if I kept you waiting." "I just got here," Priya lied, relief washing over her. Inside, they found a quiet table near the art section. Priya pulled out her sketchbook and some pens. For the first few minutes, things were awkward, stilted conversation, careful politeness. But as Priya began showing Deepa different Zentangle patterns, the tension melted away. "So you just make up these patterns?" Deepa asked, trying to copy a complicated spiral design. "Some of them. Others I learned from books or Ms. Rivera." Priya guided Deepa's hand, helping her smooth out a wobbly line. "It's not about being perfect. It's about the flow." They spent 2 hours drawing, talking in hushed library voices about school, about the mural, about their families. Priya learned that Deepa lived with her dad and stepmom, that she played violin, that she hated gym class as much as Priya did. "Kylie's having a birthday party next weekend," Deepa said as they packed up their supplies. She invited practically everyone. Priya's stomach twisted. Of course she hadn't been invited. "I'm not going," Deepa continued, surprising Priya. "I told her I have a family thing." "But really?" She hesitated. "I just don't want to go anymore." Her parties are always about making someone feel bad. Last time, she spent the whole night making fun of Raja's accent. Priya didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. "Maybe we could do something that day instead?" Deepa suggested. "There's a new art exhibit at the community center. We could check it out." The warmth that spread through Priya's chest was so intense it almost hurt. "I'd like that." Monday at school, something strange happened. As Priya walked to her first class, Deepa called out to her from down the hall. Priya! Wait up! Heads turned. Priya froze, not used to hearing her name called out so publicly. Deepa caught up to her, seemingly oblivious to the stares. Did you finish that English assignment? I'm stuck on the last question. They walked to class together, Deepa chatting the whole way. Priya felt the eyes following them, heard the whispers. But for once, she didn't shrink under the attention. At lunch, Ms. Rivera noticed right away. You're glowing today, she said as Priya sat down. Something good happened? Priya told her about the library, about the art exhibit plans, about walking to class with Deepa. That's wonderful, Ms. Rivera said, her eyes warm with genuine happiness for Priya. Friendship can be transformative. It feels weird, Priya admitted. Like it might disappear any second. That's normal after what you've been through. Ms. Rivera unwrapped her sandwich. Trust takes time to rebuild. But you're doing all the right things, being brave, being yourself. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Ms. Rivera said, I saw your mural designs. You've put so much thought into it. I want it to mean something, Priya said. Not just look pretty. The best art always does both. Ms. Rivera leaned forward. I talked to the principal about the talent showcase. He loves the idea of featuring the mural project. Priya's heart skipped. Really? Really? But there's one thing. Ms. Rivera looked serious now. As project leader, you would need to speak on stage. Just briefly, to explain the concept and introduce the team. Are you up for that? The cafeteria seemed to tilt around Priya. Speaking. On stage. In front of everyone. I don't know if I can, she whispered. You don't have to decide today. Think about it. Ms. Rivera squeezed her hand. And remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling afraid and doing it anyway. That afternoon in art club, the energy was electric. Ms. Rivera announced that their mural project had been accepted for the talent showcase. Everyone buzzed with excitement as Priya unveiled her designs. The tree represents our school, she explained, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. The roots show our shared foundation. The trunk is our core values. And the branches, that's all of us, growing in different directions but still connected. The others gathered around, pointing at details, suggesting additions. Even Zoe seemed genuinely engaged, offering ideas for how to incorporate mosaic elements into certain sections. We'll need to divide into teams, Priya said, surprising herself with how naturally she took charge. Background team, trunk team, branches team, and leaves team. Everyone picks where they want to work. As they broke into groups, Raj approached Priya. This is the coolest thing I've worked on at this school, he said quietly. Thanks for including my ideas about the geometric patterns for the roots. His sincerity caught Priya off guard. Your ideas were good, she said simply. By the end of the session, they had a solid plan and timeline. The actual painting would begin next Tuesday on the large canvas Ms. Rivera had secured. One more thing, Ms. Rivera said as they were cleaning up. For the showcase, we need a team name and a spokesperson. Priya has been our natural leader, but if anyone else wants to volunteer. It should be Priya, Deepa interrupted. It's her vision. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Priya felt her face grow hot. I don't like speaking in front of people, she stammered. None of us do, Raj pointed out. But you explain things clearly. You don't make us feel stupid when we don't get something right away. Yeah, another boy added. And you actually listen to everyone's ideas. Priya looked around at their faces, encouraging, expectant. These weren't just random classmates anymore. They were becoming something like friends. Okay, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I'll do it." Walking home with Deepa afterward, Priya felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. "I can't believe I agreed to that," she groaned. "I'm going to throw up on stage." Deepa laughed. "No, you won't. You'll be amazing. And we'll all be right there with you. What if I freeze? What if I forget everything? Then I'll jump up and do a weird dance to distract everyone," Deepa promised. "No one will even notice you messed up." Despite her anxiety, Priya found herself laughing. The sound echoed in the quiet street, unfamiliar but welcome. When she got home, her mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "How was art club?" Priya took a deep breath. "Our project got selected for the talent showcase. And I'm going to be speaking on stage." Her mom turned, eyes wide with surprise and pride. "Priya. That's wonderful." She wiped her hands on a towel and pulled Priya into a hug. "I know how hard that must be for you." "I'm scared," Priya admitted into her mom's shoulder. "Of course you are. But I'm so proud of you for doing it anyway." Her mom held her at arm's length, studying her face. "You're blooming right before my eyes." That night, Priya stood before her mirror, practiced speaking. "Our mural represents. We wanted to show. Art brings people together." Her voice shook. Her palm sweated. But she kept going, one word after another. She wasn't ready yet. But she had 2 weeks to get ready. And for the first time in a long time, Priya believed she might actually be capable of more than she'd thought possible. The next 2 weeks flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Every Tuesday and Thursday, the art club worked on the mural. Ms. Rivera had arranged for them to use the gymnasium after school, spreading a massive canvas across the floor. The tree took shape, first in pencil outlines, then in bold strokes of paint. Priya moved between the teams, offering suggestions, solving problems, making sure everyone's ideas were incorporated. She surprised herself with how easily she gave directions, how confidently she made decisions when disagreements arose. "You're a natural leader," Ms. Rivera told her one afternoon as they cleaned brushes together. "You know how to make people feel valued." Priya shook her head. "I just know what it feels like when no one listens to you." On days without art club, Priya and Deepa spent time together. They visited the community center art exhibit, wandering through galleries of local artists' work. They studied at the library. Once, they even went to the mall, something Priya would have dreaded just a month ago. At school, things were changing too. Priya still wasn't popular, but she wasn't invisible anymore. She had a place, a purpose. In English class, when it was time to form groups again, Deepa immediately pulled her chair next to Priya's. 2 other girls from art club joined them. For the first time, Priya was part of a group that actually wanted her there. Even at home, there were changes. Her dad had finally found a job, not as good as his previous one, but steady work that brought obvious relief to her parents. The dark circles under her mom's eyes were fading now that she could cut back on some of her extra shifts. One evening, Arjun peeked into Priya's room as she practiced her showcase speech. "Can I come to see you on stage?" he asked, eyes wide with admiration that made Priya's heart squeeze. "Of course you can, buddy," she said, ruffling his hair. "Front row, okay?" But despite all these positive changes, there was still Kylie. If anything, Kylie's hostility had intensified as Priya became less affected by it. She made louder comments when Priya passed in the hallway. She rolled her eyes more dramatically when Priya spoke in class. "Just ignore her," Deepa advised. "She's just mad because you're not scared of her anymore." But Priya wasn't sure that was true. She was still scared, not of Kylie specifically, but of everything crumbling, of waking up one day to find herself alone again. Some nights, She lay awake worrying that Deepa would eventually abandon her, that the art club would realize she wasn't actually talented, that Ms. Rivera would grow tired of mentoring her. "It's called imposter syndrome," Ms. Rivera told her when Priya finally confessed these fears during lunch. "Many people feel it, especially when they're growing and changing. You worry you don't deserve good things or that people will discover you're a fraud. How do I make it go away?" Priya asked. Ms. Rivera smiled gently. "You don't, entirely. You just learn to recognize it as a fear, not a truth. And you keep going anyway." 3 days before the showcase, disaster struck. Priya arrived at the gym to find several art club members standing in a circle, expressions shocked and angry. In the center of the circle was their mural, and across the carefully painted tree trunk, someone had spray-painted the word "losers" in bright red. Priya felt like she'd been punched. All their work, all those hours. Who would do this? Deepa's voice shook with anger. No one said Kylie's name, but Priya saw several eyes dart toward Zoe, who stood slightly apart from the group, looking uncomfortable. "I didn't know," Zoe said defensively, catching their looks. "I swear." Ms. Rivera arrived moments later, her face falling when she saw the damage. "Oh no," she breathed. The room erupted in angry voices, suggestions to report it, to demand the culprits be punished, to withdraw from the showcase in protest. Priya stood silent, staring at the red letters defacing their beautiful tree. "Quiet, everyone," Ms. Rivera called. When the noise subsided, she turned to Priya. "You're the team leader. What do you think we should do?" Priya felt everyone's eyes on her. Her first instinct was to give up, to accept defeat as she had so many times before. But then she looked more closely at the mural. The spray paint covered part of the trunk, but the roots were untouched. The branches and leaves, representing all the different people in their community, were still perfect. An idea began to form in her mind. "We incorporate it," she said slowly. "What?" several voices asked at once. Priya stepped forward, gesturing to the mural. "Our project is about community, right? About how we're all connected, even though we're different. Well, this is part of our community too, the hard parts, the mean parts." She traced the edge of the spray paint with her finger. "What if we don't try to cover it up? What if we work around it, make it part of the story?" There was a stunned silence. Then Raj said, "Like how real trees get scarred but keep growing?" "Exactly," Priya nodded, excitement building. "We could add new elements, maybe birds or small animals taking shelter in the branches. Flowers growing around the base. Show how life continues, how beauty can exist alongside damage." Ms. Rivera's face broke into a wide smile. "Priya, that's brilliant." The group huddled around the mural, ideas flowing rapidly. They would need to adjust their original plan, but suddenly everyone was energized, inspired by the challenge. Even Zoe jumped in with suggestions for how to balance the harsh red with softer colors elsewhere. As they worked late into the evening, transforming what had been an act of cruelty into something meaningful, Priya felt a strange sense of gratitude. If Kylie, or whoever had done this, had meant to crush their spirits, they had failed spectacularly. The day before the showcase, Principal Gupta came to see their finished work. He stood silently for several minutes, taking in every detail, the strong roots digging deep into rich soil, the trunk with its scarred section now surrounded by climbing vines and small creatures, the branches reaching toward a sky filled with birds and clouds, and hundreds of unique leaves, each one painted by a different student from the art club and other classes who had asked to contribute. When Ms. Rivera proposed this project, he finally said, "I expected something nice for the hallway. But this." He shook his head, clearly moved. "This is extraordinary. You've created something far more powerful than I imagined." He turned to Priya. "Ms. Rivera tells me you'll be speaking tomorrow?" Priya nodded, her stomach fluttering with butterflies. "I look forward to hearing what you have to say," he said warmly. That night, Priya couldn't sleep. She went over her speech again and again, switching words, practicing her tone. Nothing felt right. How could she explain what this project had come to mean, not just to her but to everyone involved? Around midnight, she crept downstairs for a glass of water and found her father sitting at the kitchen table, looking at job listings on his laptop. "Can't sleep?" he asked, closing the computer. Priya shook her head. "I'm worried about my speech tomorrow." Her father patted the chair next to him. "Tell me about it." So she did, not just about the speech, but about everything. The bullying she'd kept secret for so long. The loneliness. How Ms. Rivera had changed everything by simply sitting with her that day. The way the art club had become like a family. The vandalism and their response to it. Her father listened without interrupting. When she finished, his eyes were moist. "I'm sorry you went through that alone," he said quietly. "I wish I had known." "You had enough to worry about," Priya said. He shook his head. "No burden is too heavy when it comes to my children." He took her hand. "But Priya, do you hear the story you just told me? It's beautiful. It's real. Don't worry about finding the perfect words tomorrow. Just speak from your heart, as you did just now." Something released in Priya's chest. Her father was right. She didn't need a perfectly crafted speech. She just needed to tell the truth. When she finally went back to bed, sleep came easily. Tomorrow would be terrifying, yes. But she wouldn't be facing it alone. The morning of the showcase dawned bright and clear. Priya stood in front of her mirror, trying to decide what to wear. She finally settled on a turquoise blouse her grandmother had sent, the one with tiny mirrors sewn into the embroidery. It made her feel braver somehow, like each little reflection was showing a different version of herself, all the possibilities she contained. Her family gathered in the kitchen, the excitement almost tangible. Her mom had taken the day off work. Her dad wore a freshly ironed shirt. Even Arjun had combed his unruly hair. "My big sister, the artist," he announced proudly, making Priya laugh despite her nerves. At school, the day crawled by. Teachers kept teaching, clocks kept ticking, but Priya felt suspended in time, waiting. During lunch, she didn't go to the cafeteria. Instead, she sat with Ms. Rivera in the art room, too nervous to eat. "What if I mess up?" she whispered, staring at her untouched sandwich. "Then you'll recover and keep going," Ms. Rivera said simply. "Remember, the audience wants you to succeed. They're on your side." Priya thought about this. "Not everyone," she said, thinking of Kylie. Ms. Rivera nodded, acknowledging the truth of this. "Not everyone. But most people. And the ones who matter most." After school, the auditorium buzzed with activity. Parents and students filled the seats. Teachers rushed around making last-minute arrangements. Behind the stage, the talent show participants waited nervously, singers, dancers, a rock band, a comedy duo. The art club gathered in a classroom nearby, their mural propped against the wall, waiting to be carried out. Deepa squeezed Priya's hand. "You ready?" Priya took a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." The principal opened the show with a brief welcome. Then, one by one, the acts performed. From backstage, Priya watched a girl play violin beautifully, though her hands shook visibly. She watched two best friends perform a dance they'd choreographed themselves. She watched Raj, their quiet Raj from Art Club, bring down the house with an incredible beatboxing routine no one knew he could do. Each performer faced their fear and walked onto that stage anyway. Their courage fed Priya's own. Finally, it was their turn. 6 members of the art club carefully carried the mural onto the stage, setting it on a large easel. The auditorium lights dimmed, and a spotlight illuminated their creation. A collective wow rippled through the audience. Priya stepped forward to the microphone. Her heart hammered so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. The bright light made it difficult to see the audience, but in the front row, she could make out her family, her dad giving a thumbs up, her mom nodding encouragingly, Arjun bouncing in his seat. She opened her mouth, and for one terrible moment, no words came. But then she looked at the mural, their tree, damaged but still standing, still growing, and she found her voice. 2 months ago, I sat alone every day, she began, her voice small but clear. I was the new girl, the outsider, the one who didn't belong. I believed that was who I would always be. She gestured to the mural. This tree tells a different story. Not just my story, but all of ours. We all know what it's like to feel alone sometimes. To feel hurt. To wonder if we belong anywhere. As she spoke, her voice grew stronger. She explained how the project began, how every person contributed their ideas, how they worked together to create something bigger than any of them could have made alone. 3 days before this showcase, someone vandalized our mural, she said. There were gasps from the audience. They spray-painted the word losers across our tree trunk. She paused, letting the impact of those words sink in. We could have given up. We could have been angry or defeated. Instead, we decided to incorporate the damage into our design. She pointed to the vines and creatures that now surrounded the red lettering. Because that's how real communities work. We don't ignore the painful parts. We acknowledge them, learn from them, grow around them. Looking out at the audience, Priya could now see faces clearly, teachers nodding, parents leaning forward, students watching with genuine interest. Somewhere in the middle rows, she spotted Kylie, her expression unreadable. Each leaf on this tree was painted by a different student, Priya continued. Not just from art club, but from every grade. Because we all belong to this community, whether we realize it yet or not. We're all connected, all part of the same living system. She turned to gesture to the art club members standing proudly beside their creation. I want to thank my amazing team for their creativity, hard work, and friendship. And I especially want to thank Ms. Rivera, our art teacher, who showed all of us, that sometimes the most important thing one person can do for another is simply sit beside them when they're alone. The applause was immediate and thunderous. People stood, cheering. Priya's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. The art club gathered around her, pulling her into a group hug. Afterward, in the reception area where refreshments were being served, people kept coming up to congratulate them. Parents asked where the mural would be displayed. Teachers praised their creativity. Even the principal pulled Priya aside to tell her it was the most meaningful project he'd seen in his 20 years at the school. Priya's family enveloped her in hugs. Her mother couldn't stop wiping tears from her eyes. My brave girl, she kept saying. Her father simply held her tight, his pride too deep for words. As the crowd began to thin, Priya spotted a familiar figure standing alone near the mural. Kylie was studying it, her expression thoughtful. Priya hesitated, then walked over to stand beside her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Kylie said, without looking at Priya, "It's really good." "Thank you," Priya said quietly. "I didn't do it," Kylie added. "The spray paint. I wanted you to know that." Priya nodded. She wasn't sure she believed Kylie, but somehow, it didn't matter anymore. "It turned out better this way, I think." Kylie finally turned to look at her. There was something different in her eyes, not quite remorse, but something softer than her usual coldness. "Yeah," she said. "It did." She walked away without another word. It wasn't an apology or a friendship, but it was something, an acknowledgement, perhaps. A tiny leaf of its own. Later that evening, the art club and their families gathered at a local pizza restaurant to celebrate. Amid the laughter and conversation, Priya found herself sitting next to Ms. Rivera. "So," Ms. Rivera said, her eyes twinkling, "still think you can't speak in public?" Priya laughed. "I was terrified the whole time. But you did it anyway. That's the point." Ms. Rivera's expression grew more serious. "I'm so proud of you, Priya. Not just for today, but for all of it, your art, your leadership, your courage." "I wouldn't have done any of it without you," Priya said. Ms. Rivera shook her head. "No. I just sat down at your table that day. Everything else? That was all you." Across the restaurant, Priya could see Deepa teaching Arjun a clapping game. Her parents were chatting with Raja's parents, laughing over something. The room was full of connections that hadn't existed 2 months ago. "I used to count the days until summer," Priya said softly. "Now I'm almost sad the school year is ending." Ms. Rivera smiled. "This is just the beginning, you know. Think of all the tables you'll sit at in your life, all the people whose lives you'll touch." Priya looked around at the joyful scene, friends and family, laughter and belonging, and knew it was true. This wasn't an ending. It was just the first chapter of a much longer story. A story she was finally ready to live.